Thursday night football, the Cowboys take down the Seahawks. This is probably the best Thursday night game that I've watched up to this point in the season. It was a lot of offense, no defense. And when you think about the Dallas Cowboys, we pretty much can all agree that they have one of the best defenses in the NFL. They got a really talented secondary with the also really talented front seven. But anytime this defense goes up against an offense that rivals them in talent, they underperform. They didn't play well against the 49ers. They didn't play that great against the Philadelphia Eagles. And this Seahawks offense, they chewed this defense up, spat them out, and walked all over them. Anytime DaRon Bland was matched up against DK Metcalf or JSN, he was getting worked. It seemed like Seattle was running whoever offense on DaRon Bland. And this is somebody who is having an all-pro season. And some people feel he deserves to be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. But he got shitted on all game in this matchup outside of that interception that he made late in the third quarter, which was a really great play on him. But outside of that, this was probably the worst performance that DaRon Bland has had up to this point in the season. And we just can't single him out because the rest of the secondary, they didn't play good also. There were a lot of pass interference calls. Stephon Gilmore had a pass interference penalty called on him. Dan Quinn's defense doesn't play their best football when they're going against their best competition on the opposite side of the football. Meanwhile, when you look at the offense, it was a completely different story. Dak Prescott, this dude has played some really good football for the Cowboys over the last couple of months. And if he continues to play the way that he's had the last couple of weeks in December, when you look at how tough their schedule gets after this game, you got to go up against the Eagles, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Detroit Lions. If Dak Prescott can keep up this level of play, there's no reason why he doesn't deserve to be in the MVP discussion. Against Seattle, he went 29-41, 299 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. This dude was kind of machine-like in this game. He was really methodical, making fantastic decisions with the football. But this offensive line, though, they were kind of getting a little bit worked up front by Seattle. But outside of that, this was a fantastic performance that we saw out of Dallas offense in this matchup. But this defense, they got to play a lot better anytime they're going up against any of the NFL's best offenses, because Seattle's offense has not been that great this season. This is probably the best performance that Seattle has had offensively since when they beat the Detroit Lions in week 2. And when you're going up against a struggling offense, you don't expect for your secondary to get destroyed the way that they did by Geno Smith and company. The Seattle Seahawks, they had a chance to win this game, but their final 2 offensive possessions were absolutely horrendous. And this team finds themselves in the same exact situation that they were in around this time last year. You see, last year they started out really hot, and then during the middle of the season, late November, early December, this team started to get cold, but then they were able to find a way to backdoor their way into the postseason. Same thing is going on this year. They started out, 5-2, and then they got smacked by the Baltimore Ravens, and then after that, this team has lost 4 out of their last 5 games, and with the Rams and Packers starting to hit their stride, there's a really good chance that if Seattle doesn't turn this thing around, they could find themselves missing the playoffs this year. This defense has played pretty good, but in this game, they had no answers for the Cowboys offense. And offensively, you got to feel really encouraged with what you saw out of Geno Smith. Geno Smith, he has definitely regressed this season relative to how he played in 2022 when he said that he didn't write back to the haters. Well, this season, he's been writing back. But this definitely was a really great performance out of Geno. He was really good throwing the football downfield, something that he did really well last season. He was one of the best deep ball throwers in the league. He had DK Metcalf on a couple of big plays downfield. You also had a touchdown that got taken off to JSN right before halftime, but there was a pass interference call on that play, so they ended up scoring anyway. And we talk about Dak Prescott being able to maintain his level of performance. Geno Smith, he's going to need to play this way for the rest of the season for Seattle. Because their next couple of games, it's hard to see them winning too many of them. You got to play the 49ers on the road. Then you got to play Philadelphia. You got to play Tennessee. And although you should beat Tennessee, with Mike Vrabel being their head coach, you can never overlook them. Then you got the Steelers and the Cardinals. There's a really good chance that the Seahawks may only win 2 of those games and they could potentially miss out on the postseason. This is a talented team. And I still don't really understand why this team, who started out so hot, is now 6-6. You can blame the coaching staff all you want to, but the way that this offense just completely unraveled the last 2 possessions really blew me. Because prior to those, this offense was looking completely fucking flawless against one of the most talented defenses in the NFL. Anything that they wanted to do throwing the football, they were able to have success doing. DK Metcalf, I'm glad I'm not in the NFL having to match up against this dude. He's big as hell, has incredible athleticism. I don't know how these cornerbacks have the balls to want to tackle this dude. Well, I guess they got no choice because they're getting paid millions of dollars to cover and tackle him. But it's just like, he was on in this game. And he was terrorizing DaRon Bland. And somebody a couple of days ago asked me, where do I rank DK Metcalf amongst the NFL's best receivers? And I got to say, probably around the 15 to 14-ish range. The thing with DK Metcalf is that he's a really good deep threat. And when Seattle was able to get him involved down the field in a deep vertical passing game, he's one of the more talented wide receivers in the league. And we definitely saw that on full display in this game. JSN also had a couple of nice grabs as well. This offense played really well, but when it mattered the most, they unraveled. And that's been the theme with Seattle this year, right? This is why I'm not that high on Seattle right now as I was prior to the season starting. Because they don't play well late in games. They didn't play well against Cincinnati late in that game. This is one of these teams that just doesn't know how to win, especially when they're going up against good teams. The only great team that Seattle has beaten this season that has a winning record was the Detroit Lions. And if they were to run it back with Detroit right now, I don't think there's any way anybody would pick against Detroit winning that matchup. Even if they do find a way to make it into the playoffs, I don't think they're going to be anything more than an early round exit. And you can't put all of Seattle's woes on Geno Smith. This just has been an inconsistent team. The offensive line played pretty well, but you haven't had this kind of performance out of the offensive line for the last couple of games. This is probably the best this offensive line has played this season. And this is a pretty talented offensive line. Now, I know they've dealt with some injuries and whatnot, but still, for this offensive line to have the kind of performance against the Dallas Cowboys, who have one of the better fronts in the NFL, you're kind of scratching your head wondering, where the hell was this the previous couple of weeks? Especially when you played Cincinnati. You definitely could have used this offensive line when you played the Bengals, because that was a big reason why you lost that game. I'm just not really high on Seattle. You know, this was a team that I picked to make it to the Super Bowl before the season. And I know Seahawks fans are going to say, man, JT, you overrated us. Like, we're such a young team. Yeah, you are a young team. But with all the talent you have, there's no reason why your season should be unraveling the way that it is. You lost 4 out of your last 5 after starting 5-2. You were non-competitive against the Baltimore Ravens. There's way too much talent on Seattle's roster for them to be unable to consistently compete with the NFL's best. So these are my thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys and Seattle Seahawks Thursday night matchup. The Cowboys improved to 9-3 on the season. And also, I got to state how big this win was for Dallas, because now, if the Philadelphia Eagles lose this Sunday to the 49ers, that matchup next week against the Philadelphia Eagles is potentially going to be for who gains control of the number 1 seed in the NFC. If the Dallas Cowboys hope to make it to the Super Bowl this year, I think they got to make sure that they get that 1 seed. That 1 seed is so important because then you got that first round bye and you got home field advantage all throughout the playoffs. Plus, You only have to win one game to find yourself in the conference championship game. Something that the Dallas Cowboys don't really know too much about since VHS tapes came out. The last time I seen the Dallas Cowboys in a conference championship game, I was watching that shit in black and white on my grandma's VCR tape back at her house back in the Ville. So the Cowboys, if they're going to have any shot at winning the Super Bowl this year, they got to get that 1 seed. Because if not, they may not be a wild card exit, but I couldn't see them making it any further than the divisional round. But with how well Dak Prescott has played, I feel really confident about their chances of being able to knock off Philadelphia and get control of that 1 seed if Philadelphia falls to San Francisco. I do think that Dak Prescott is playing the best football that he has played of his career. He looks super confident. He's been a little bit mobile, extending plays, picking up yardage with his legs when nothing is there. I like what I've been seeing out of Dak Prescott, but I'm not ready to announce him as an MVP candidate yet until I see him have the performance that he had against Seattle, against Philadelphia, and some of the other teams that are considered to be just as good as the Dallas Cowboys. He had a really good performance against Philadelphia in their first go-around, but I need to see that again. Okay, I just want to see consistent high-level quarterback play out of Dak Prescott for these next couple of games before I start claiming he's an MVP candidate.